Deep within the heart of West Africa, where ancient traditions intertwine with rapid change, setting the very rhythm of life, lie shadows that do not dissipate with the first rays of sun. These are stories whispered through bustling markets, passed from mouth to mouth, shrouded in a mixture of fear and disbelief. They speak of those whose lives were suddenly cut short, whose voices fell silent forever, leaving behind only oppressive quiet and a scattering of unresolved questions. Today, we will dive into the stark reality of unsolved murders and cold cases that have darkened the lands of Ghana and Nigeria. These regions, so rich in culture and centuries of history, sadly also face brutal trials on the path to justice's triumph. Let us journey in spirit to Ghana, to the vibrant metropolis of Accra, during the period between 1993 and 2000. The city, usually filled with lively movement, ringing voices, and a kaleidoscope of bright colors, unexpectedly became a sinister arena for monstrous crimes. Women, both very young and already grown, began to disappear. Then their bodies were found, mutilated, bearing signs of strangulation. It was a time when fear became an unseen but omnipresent companion for many Accra residents. These chilling events earned a grim nickname in the media: the Accra Strangler. Each new body discovered in dense thickets or on forgotten wastelands ignited fresh waves of panic, spawning countless rumors and reinforcing the chilling conviction that an elusive and ruthless killer stalked the city. True terror gripped Accra. Women feared venturing out alone, especially after dusk. Parents sternly warned their daughters against staying out late, and Accra's usually vibrant, noisy nighttime streets suddenly emptied, plunging into an unsettling silence. Law enforcement found themselves under immense pressure. Investigations seemed to stall, yielding no progress. The absence of advanced forensic labs, meager resources, and at times, even suspicions of corruption, all erected formidable barriers to uncovering the truth. Investigators, many of them black men deeply committed to protecting their families and their people, labored tirelessly day and night. But how could they find someone who operated with such stealth, who masterfully concealed every trace? How does one capture an unseen adversary, much like a phantom? And, more unsettling still, how does one convince a society growing increasingly distrustful that justice can still prevail? Many years passed, and then, in 2003, the focus of the investigation turned to the figure of Charles Ebo Quansah. Soon, his name became synonymous with unadulterated terror for many. His arrest and subsequent conviction for a string of brutal murders for which he was accused marked a true turning point in the inquiry. However, as often happens in such convoluted cases, many questions remained unanswered. Was the true perpetrator of these nightmares truly apprehended? Or did the mysterious Accra Strangler not act alone? And how many more victims might have gone unnoticed, their tragic stories unheard? This case, while seemingly identifying its culprit, left deep scars upon the very fabric of the city and permanently settled in the minds of its inhabitants, sowing seeds of distrust in the justice system. Let us transport ourselves in spirit to Nigeria, a land of vast expanses, striking cultural diversity, and sadly, one fraught with considerable social and political challenges. In the year 2001, Nigeria was rocked by the news of the murder of one of its most respected and influential politicians, Justice Minister Bola Ige. Bola Ige, a man held in deep esteem as an outstanding lawyer and public figure, was found murdered in his own home in the city of Ibadan. His passing plunged the entire nation into shock and ignited a wave of public outrage. He was a true voice of justice, a tireless fighter for human rights, and his assassination was seen as a brazen assault on the very fabric of the state and the inviolability of the rule of law. The investigation into this case was shrouded in an impenetrable veil of difficulty from its very inception. The circumstances surrounding this brutal murder were exceedingly complex. Alongside official accounts, rumors proliferated within society about deep political motives, acts of revenge, and bloody internal power struggles. Witnesses either feared speaking the truth or were subjected to monstrous pressure. Nigeria's legal system, like that of many other African nations, suffered from a chronic lack of resources, pervasive corruption, and disheartening slowness. Many long years passed before anyone was brought to the justice they deserved. Even after the trials concluded, the questions about the full, undeniable truth, about everyone involved in this villainy, and about the deep, underlying causes of this brutal murder, remained for many without a final, exhaustive answer. This case became not just a tragic event, but a somber symbol of a broader, festering problem. How to achieve justice when the very system meant to provide it becomes consumed by its own systemic ailments. However, perhaps one of the most agonizing and disturbing cold cases of recent years was the mysterious disappearance of 6 young girls in the city of Takoradi, Ghana. This tragedy unfolded quite recently, between 2018 and 2019, and the entire country watched the unfolding events with anxiety, witnessing the profound helplessness and immense despair of parents tirelessly searching for their missing children. The girls, most of whom were still teenagers, were abducted over a period of several months. Frantic and fearful families, beside themselves with worry, turned to the police for help. They were almost certain who was responsible for this terrible crime: a local resident who, as it later turned out, was a serial offender bearing the sinister nickname the Takoradi Kidnapper. But, to the unspeakable horror of the parents and all of society, the police's actions, in their opinion, were unacceptably slow and ineffective. Accusations of incompetence and missed opportunities that could have saved lives were leveled against the law enforcement agencies. Days of anxiety bled into weeks, and weeks into months of agonizing anticipation and grief. Parents, driven to the brink of despair, took the search for their children into their own hands, facing considerable risk to draw attention to their unbearable plight. They organized spontaneous protests in the city streets, reaching out to the media, pleading for help and exposure. The public outcry was nothing short of immense. The story of the young victims from Takoradi swiftly became a symbol not only of childhood vulnerability and pervasive fear, but, more tragically, of a profound distrust towards those meant to protect us, the law enforcement agencies. It fostered a stark sense that they were either incapable or unwilling to safeguard the most precious thing in our lives: our children. Then, when the bodies of the unfortunate girls were finally discovered, it delivered a crushing, heartbreaking blow to everyone following the horrific news. The sheer reality of what had happened was soul-chilling. But even more unbearable was the dawning realization that perhaps this tragedy could have been averted had actions been swift and timely. Following the discovery of the bodies, an investigation commenced, which, alas, uncovered a multitude of oversights and miscalculations. Questions hung heavy in the air. How had the criminal remained at large for so long? How had he carried out these abductions with such apparent ease? This story, like so many others, exposed profound issues within African society, issues often lurking just beneath the surface. There was the unequal access to justice, particularly for those most vulnerable. There was the chronic underfunding of law enforcement, a shortage of modern equipment, and an insufficient number of highly skilled specialists. Problems existed concerning corruption, which ruthlessly eroded all trust in state institutions. And of course, one cannot forget societal pressure, where victims of violence, especially women, faced severe stigma and condemnation, forcing them into silence and despair. Recall the horrific crimes of the Accra Strangler. The fear he mercilessly sowed was not merely fear of imminent death, but an acute, paralyzing dread of the unknown, a sinister premonition that justice might prove elusive. Parents who had lost their daughters forever in Takoradi experienced that same agonizing blend of terror and utter powerlessness. They fought not only for their innocent, lost children, but also for their honor, for their dignity, standing against a system that seemed to have utterly forgotten them. Personally, I cannot even comprehend how one can live daily with such an unbearable burden. The exhausting anticipation, the constant fear, and then the irreversible, all-consuming loss. And when the oppressive feeling that something could have been done, that precious opportunities were missed, is added to this, it becomes truly unbearable. Such tragedies irrevocably destroy families, undermine the foundations of society, and extinguish faith in a brighter future. These grim affairs, whether the Accra Strangler case, the brutal murder of Boli Igwe, or the heart-wrenching tragedy in Takoradi, serve as a heavy, chilling reminder that even in the most vibrant and bustling corners of Africa, sinister shadows always lurk. Shadows born from the depths of human cruelty, from the fragility of established systems, from unforgivable social indifference. And the fight for justice in these lands is not merely legal procedure. It is a genuine, deeply human drama. In it, every minuscule detail, everyone ready to testify, everyone who has slipped through the cracks, gains exceptional significance. These cold cases, they are far from just soulless statistics. Behind each one stand real people, real suffering, true stories that we are simply obliged to keep in our memory. They silently remind us of the pressing need for continuous work to improve justice systems, of the vital importance of comprehensive support for those who have suffered, and that even in the darkest, most hopeless moments, the hope for just retribution must never, under any circumstances, be extinguished. And as long as mysteries remain unsolved, as long as unanswered questions hang in the air, it is our duty to keep searching, keep speaking, keep fighting on behalf of those who are no longer able to do so themselves. For it is precisely in these untold, forgotten stories that we find true understanding of the value of human life.